All right, I've been wanting to do a video on this today, and I tried on my computer, and it didn't turn out the way I wanted it to. The feel of it, anyways. So, there's all these wonderful Funko Pops here. Now, you'll notice a lot for Doctor Who. This year's Doctor Who let me down. I didn't enjoy it. And I know people talk about, social justice, this and that, and it shouldn't be a woman. Nah, I'm fine with the Doctor being a woman. And I'm fine with equality being a part of the show because it's always been there. But make the characters memorable. The companions weren't memorable. The episodes weren't memorable. I didn't find any of the villains to be particularly memorable. So while I have this wonderful Clara TARDIS, I have this regular TARDIS, I have Davros, who is one of my favorite villains in the history of television. I have all this other Star Wars, Rick and Morty, and all this other wonderful stuff up here. See, Rick and Morty. The truth is, I didn't really watch Doctor Who this year. I didn't really care. I eventually got through it, but can I remember episodes? There's one with spiders. There's one with a guy with teeth in his face. And he showed up at the end, I think, of that season. And they had a Dalek episode, which was good. But it showed that they kind of had to go back to the well and go back to an old villain in order to make it work. Which you could say, well, that's happened before with Doctor Who, but I remember new villains and new characters coming in with the 10th Doctor who were okay. And sometimes it was just a bunch of weird animal heads they'd use as villains, but fine, that's fine. Which is the Russell T Davies staple at the time, right? AEW. AEW to me is what has kind of happened with Doctor Who in its beginning. So I'm going to use Doctor Who as an example because it's a good one to use. So you have WWE, which, if we're going to make that comparison, WWE is right now. Doctor Who right now. Everybody knows who Doctor Who is right now. AEW would be sort of like if it had a reboot with one of the old Doctors. Kind of, sort of. But it was bringing in all these new ideas. And people might enjoy that reboot a little more than they enjoy the current Doctor Who. AEW is a hearkening back to when wrestling was wrestling. You'd have promos. In between matches, but it didn't feel like they went on for a bloody hour. Now, last night on Raw, you had an hour and 20 minutes before you got to wrestling, which in a wrestling program is odd. And I can't imagine any show or movie doing that. I'm just looking at my DVD shelf here and thinking, what movie could I look at and say 45 minutes in hasn't gone anywhere, hasn't done anything? And it's hard for me to think of one that I've watched and enjoyed that's done that. It's hard for me to think of one. And that's where wrestling is. And then when you have your first match that involves Shane McMahon, get Shane McMahon out of the ring. Get him out of there. AEW had its pay-per-view, and you have Goldust in there, and Goldust is an older wrestler. And you have Chris Jericho, who's also, by today's standards, an older wrestler. But it feels like with WWE, we're having these feuds built up around Shane McMahon, who really, I don't understand Roman Reigns versus Shane McMahon at all. I don't even understand why that's a thing. Roman won the title and he was made as champ, right? And now he has to fight Shane McMahon. And we have to talk about the Inouye family and the McMahon family, and nobody cares. I don't. I've been a wrestling fan for 30 years. I don't care about what the McMahons are doing today. I don't want to see them on television, which is why I've stopped watching Raw live. And last night, all I watched of Raw, and this was, of course, in a replay because there's a hockey game on last night, which I really enjoyed. The only thing I went back to watch was Nikki Cross and Becky Lynch against the Iconics. Because there was nothing else that I looked at and said, yeah, I'd like to sit through 20 minutes of this because I already know how it's going to end. And then WWE name dropped AEW, which makes no sense. Just ignore it. They don't even have a regular TV show until October. But for people who expect the show to get better, I think they're going to be in for some disappointment. I think WWE has so many writers and so many rewrites and so much crap going on. And you know, the funny thing is, if you watch the Monday Night Wars, you hear Chris Jericho and Dean Malenko and a lot of these guys talking about how there was a glass ceiling they couldn't break through. And the show was still being written when they went to air. So they had no idea what was going on. Nobody knew who was in charge. And it was a mess backstage. Everything we're hearing about WWE right now is the same, except Vince McMahon seems to have the last word on everything, which is fine. But when you look at some of the crap that's going on, you have to ask, do we need to get a new person in charge? Do we need to change this? And then there's people who are holding on to this idea that when the XFL starts up, that's going to fix things. My problem with that is we don't need the XFL. We don't need another football league. I'm not sure why there's another football league. Whereas wrestling, we definitely need another wrestling organization who could compete on a financial level with the WWE. They don't have to be better with the production values. They don't have to have big stars appearing at their shows. They don't need like Mike Tyson walking out there. They don't need Evander Holyfield. They don't need anybody. All they need to do is put on good wrestling matches and feature good wrestlers. And they seem to be willing to do that. And have it so that we understand what's coming. See, we used to do matches in WWE when pay-per-views were 3 months in between, where you'd get an idea where things were going. Now that we have pay-per-views, every 3 weeks? Whatever. Like now you get Baron Corbin against Seth Rollins, and to quote Tony Schiavone, yeah, that's going to put some butts in seats. Which of course was a line that he got fed to him, or at the very least, it was in the spirit of what Eric Bischoff wanted him to do, which was crap on Mick Foley winning the title. See, WCW looked at Mick Foley winning the WWE title and said, that guy's not a main eventer here. We don't care what he does there. Steve Austin was a mid-carder in WCW. Eddie Guerrero was a mid-carder in WCW. Chris Jericho couldn't get out of the cruiserweights in WCW. Rey Mysterio couldn't get over either. What we're looking at in WWE right now is a lot of wrestlers who are upset because they know they've got the talent and they don't get the chance to go out there and show it, and they're going to AEW. And Dean Malenko, now back to the name Jon Moxley, is the highest profile guy to say, yeah, I don't enjoy this, I want out. And to be very frank about it. And so frank about it that everybody went, he's not actually leaving. This is just that he's not actually going to leave the company. That's just ridiculous. He makes more money in WWE than he would anywhere else. And reportedly, he turned down a massive deal from WWE. He's kind of proven it can work. And so where we're at now is that there's a lot of guys in WWE that aren't being used. Because Lord knows you need to have Bobby Lashley and Baron Corbin back in the ring in a tag match again, or whatever's going on there, like anybody cares. You don't... Anytime that a wrestler gets over on his own, whether it's Rusev with the whole Rusev Day thing, or it's looking way back to Zack Ryder with Long Island IZ and his online channel, WWE has to ruin it. Either they squash that push when it happens, or they jump all over it like, oh yeah, we're going to do this too. I know Zack Ryder at one of the Table for Three segments, shows they run. He said, he wasn't having fun with it towards the end, and WWE was taking it over, and they were deciding what he could and couldn't do with his YouTube channel. Yeah, what the hell? He got over on this channel and they had to crap on it. They had to go, oh, this is getting big, and we'll take it. I would have answered, I'm not your employee. I'm not sure why I have to give it to you. But he won't do that. He's a good company guy. What's going on now is some of these good company guys that for years have been just taking it don't have to anymore. There's an alternative. And WWE has become the big bloated WCW and the company that just rolls out the red carpet for the old guys. Undertaker versus Goldberg. Why? Because money. Back in WCW days, you had Roddy Piper versus Hulk Hogan, chapter 136, because money. The thing that people forget, and I'll end on this, I don't want to talk too long. That's part of the reason I scrapped the first take of this. People forget that WCW made a lot of money. They made a lot of money. They made it early on by putting all the main eventers in the ring at all times, by giving us dream matches that we wanted for years, and paying guys a lot of money. And sometimes paying guys who were lazy. They didn't want to wrestle as much as everybody else. Part-timers got pushed just as much as guys who were working at the bottom of the card. They got paid more and they worked less. Look at the complaints right now about WWE. They're not as bad as WCW, but AEW might be smarter than what WWE was back then. WCW became a big deal because WWE was not doing things properly on their show, and Nitro gave people an alternative. Then Nitro became crap and people went back to Raw because Raw adapted. Now we're 20 years into Raw being the only show, that and SmackDown both being WWE, and I know TNA's had Impact and now it's just Impact Wrestling and ROH and all this, but for that really big TV contract, AEW is the first one that looks like they're going to have that locked down since WCW went under. And the joke that, Vince McMahon will just buy it out later. Vince McMahon can't buy Tony Khan. Tony Khan's worth billions. And he is totally willing to bankroll this, and by just my estimates off the top of my head, the company made over $10 million in its first event. The first night they've even had. People want an alternative. They are flocking to that alternative. And for fans of wrestling, it's going to work. Now, for a lot of WWE fans, they're going to say, no, we're not going to, no. AEW, my favorite line is, AEW sucks. That's my favorite line I saw out of Saturday Night at All, and I will keep that in mind for the next event they do, which is in June, which is not like the big pay-per-view, but it's one of the minor ones they're doing in between. And that's just because they don't have the regular weekly show. But, the AEW sucks thing right at the start of their first ever event, what are people so insecure about? That's all I think, is that this is just people who are insecure. Through a wrestling show's first ever event, in their first ever match, say, well, this sucks. Okay, it hasn't even started yet. What are you worried about? And I think there are people who are genuinely worried that given an alternative, and a good alternative, people might say, forget it. We're done with this. And, WWE was very nearly put out of business by WCW. So there may be some fear on some level that a new company could chip and chip and chip away. They're not going to put WWE out of business. But it might make them at least sweat a little bit. But that doesn't start till October, so don't look for big changes in WWE until October. If you're looking for changes now, I don't think there's going to be anything that gets changed until October, and that's only if they lose the ratings war to AEW. I will watch AEW's weekly show, the same as I've tried watching ROH, MLW, because I enjoy wrestling for what it is when it's good wrestling. There's some bad wrestling out there as well, but there's some really good wrestling too. So, there you go. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll just go ahead and just pan around to more of the Funkos that are up on the wall. There's Funkos over there too. And all the DVDs on the shelf. There you go. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.